we're talking about quadratics in Unit 4. So we have factored, right? Quadratic meaning when we had the x squared. So we factored those. We're still factoring those. We'll continue to factor those. But we're going to do some other things with them now. So we talked about the shape of a quadratic, right? What was the shape of a quadratic?
It's like a U.
Yeah, it's kind of a U shape, right? It's called a parabola. And remember, the sign of the x squared term kind of helped us decide whether it opened up or opened down, didn't it? Yeah? All right. So, looking at this, a quadratic function is a function described by this equation. This is the general form or standard form. Remember, f of x is just function notation, right? F of x can be replaced with y, yes? All right. Where a does not equal 0. The graph of a quadratic function is a parabola. This is where we have that U shape that either opens up if x squared is positive or opens down, remember, if x squared is negative, yes? In a quadratic function, the ax squared term is known as the quadratic term. The one with the x squared is known as the quadratic term. Bx is known as the linear term. So if it just has the x, it's linear. And the c is the constant. Remember, a constant is a number with no variable, yes? In example 1, it says graph f of x equals by making a table of values. And it tells us we can use a graphing calculator. So if you don't have one, I would grab one. So, how do we graph? What do we do on this? You go to your y equals. If there's something there, you want to clear it out, right? And then we just plug this in, yes? So remember, your x is right there by the alpha. X squared, your squared is kind of up catty corner from the 7. Plus 3x and minus 1, yes? Remember, you have to use the minus sign if it's between two terms, and if it's in front, you have to use that negative sign down here at the bottom, yes? All right. So then what do I do? Okay, you can press graph, but look at mine. Isn't that kind of funky? So if yours is kind of funky, how do we get to that standard window?
Window.
Or if you go to window, you'd have to input stuff, right?
Okay.
If you go zoom, you can always do standard. So zoom 6 will always get you back into that 10 by 10 window. Okay, so we need to put this over here, yes? In order to do that, we have to have a table of values. You have to write this table of values down. Now, what do we know, or how do we know what to plug in? Well, if I look at this, I know I need to come over here, what? -1, 2, 3, at least to -4, don't I? And I need to come over here at least to +1. Do you agree with that? So I'm going to start at -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, and 1. That's what I'm going to start with. I may have to add some other things in, but I'm going to start with that. Now, how do I get to those values?
Second graph.
Yes, second graph gives me that table, right? And then some of ours are not set to where we can put stuff in that table. You just have to scroll through. But if you want to be able to input anything, which you're going to need to be able to do, so you have to, if you can't plug a number into your table, everybody needs to try that right now. If you can't plug in like 3 and hit enter and it gives you that, then you need to fix the calculator. So to fix that, we would do second window So that table set is what we're after right there. And we want that independent to be on ask. So you have to scroll down. Uh-oh, what did I do? Scroll down here to independent, and this needs to be on ask. So you'd scroll over and hit enter. So you use these cursor buttons to do that. So now that it's on ask, I would do second graph, and I'm going to have a blank table. And I can enter these numbers in then. -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, and 1. Yes.
How'd you change it? Because mine's not letting me put it in.
Okay, second window.
Okay.
And you want this to be on ask. So you scroll down, go over to ask, and hit enter.
Okay.
All right. So at -4, I would be at +3. -3, I'm at -1. -2, I'm at -3. -1, I'm at -3. 0, I'm at -1. And 1, I'm at +3. And then I need to graph these, right? So this point, -4, 3, I go left 4, up 3. And you have to plot your points. Here you go left 3, down 1. This one you go left 2, down 3. Left 1, down 3. Over 0, down 1. Right 1, up 3. Now, do you see a problem? I see a problem. Can we just have a flat bottom here? It has to have a U shape, right? So I've got to have something down here. Yes? So right here where I see this lowest value, you notice between -2 and -1, there's got to be something else in there, doesn't there? So when these two match, I know that I'm going to have something between these two numbers. What's between -2 and -1? -1.5. And so we have to plug that into our calculator. That's why you have to be able to plug in numbers, because that's not going to be given in your table of values, right? So if we plug in -1.5, then it gives us -3.25. So I know I have to go left 1.5 and down 3 and a little bit more. And now you can see that parabola shape. Remember, you have to have arrows on the ends because it's continuing to go up and to the left and up and to the right, isn't it? And you have to have a U shape, not a V shape. Everybody understand that? This right here is that lowest point, isn't it? That is called your vertex. All right, let's do one more of those looking at this right here. We're going to look at A. How would I get back to just a regular screen on this? Second, and right beside that is quit, and that will get you back to your regular screen, right? All right, but what do I need to do if I need to enter this into my calculator? Go to y equals. Then what? Yep, plug it in, right? And I have to use the negative there, don't I? So here I have to use this negative button. -2x squared plus 8x and minus 3. So if it's between two numbers, you use the minus sign. If it's in front, you use the negative sign. And what do we do next? Graph. We know this should be upside down, right? Because of this negative in front. Yeah. All right, so this is what it needs to look like. So when I use my table of values, I got to figure out what I'm going to plug in, right? So looking at this, what do you suppose I need to plug in?
0.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? From 0 to 4. So that I can get that full U shape, yes? All right, and then what do I do to do that? second graph. And then I can just enter my numbers, right? So at 0, where should we be? 1, 3, 2, 5, 3, and 4, -3. So over 0, down 3. Right 1, up 3. Right 2, up 5. Right 3, up 3. Right 4, down 3. Can you tell me what your vertex is right away?
Yes.
Yeah, when these two match, you know it's got to be between them, right? And so between those would be the point 2, 5. Do you agree with that? All right. And so here is my graph, making sure I put arrows on the ends, making sure you have your points plotted. Okay, so the axis of symmetry is a line through the graph of the parabola that divides it into two congruent halves, meaning it would be mirror images across that line of symmetry. The equation of the axis of symmetry is x equals -b over 2a. So remember, we're talking about ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, right? So the a and b comes from this number and this number. So let's find the axis of symmetry for this one. So your axis of symmetry would be x equals negative, what is the b in this equation? Ax squared plus bx plus c. That would be your c, wouldn't it? So your b is your 8. What would a be? -2. C would be -3. So we're doing, right here it tells us -b over 2a, correct? So -8 over 2 times, what is a? -2. So this would be what? -8 over -4. Do you agree? So your axis of symmetry is the line x equals 2. Now you have to have x equals 2. That is a line, a vertical line, the equation of a vertical line. So with the axis of symmetry, x equals 2, you would go right to, your axis of symmetry will always be graphed with a dotted line. So you can see here the axis of symmetry goes through that vertex, right? The middle of it. If we were to fold it across, it'd be the same on the left as it is on the right, yes? So you're going to have to be able to do this algebraically. So make sure that you understand that. All right. And then the next thing is the vertex. The vertex is the point at which the axis of symmetry intersects the parabola, also known as the highest or lowest point on a parabola. It is given by the point. You notice your x-coordinate is what you get from your axis of symmetry. Your y-coordinate, what it's telling us is we have to plug that back into the function, f of that point. So for our vertex, since we found our axis of symmetry, we know the x-coordinate has to be 2, right? To find the y-coordinate, we're going to plug into this equation. So here we have g of 2. So that gives us -2. And then we're going to plug in our x, 2 squared, plus 8 times x is 2, and we have -3. So what is 2 squared? So I have -2 times 4, plus 8 times 2 is, and -3, correct? Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8 plus 16 minus 3. Well, negative 8 plus 16 is 8. And 8 minus 3 is 5. So G of 2 equals 5, right? So our vertex is the point 2, 5. Well, we saw that graphically right here, didn't we? So algebraically, this is what we're going to do. You can also see that from your graph, yes? But you're going to be able to find these without graphing them. Questions? So you've got to know how to find your axis of symmetry. You've got to know how to find your vertex. All right. The next thing we're going to look at is example 2. In example 2, this is like what your first 3 problems on your homework is going to be like. So your first 3 problems are going to be like example 2. It says consider f of x equals. It tells us to find the y-intercept. How do we find a y-intercept? We've done this before. Yes. Let x equal 0 and solve for y, right? Yep. So we have to find a y-intercept. We have to find the axis of symmetry. And we have to find the vertex. That's all for part A. Okay? Now, if I look at that function, is it in the correct form? Is it in ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 form? No. So I need to reorder this, don't I? So I need my x squared first. So this is a positive x squared. And then my next one would be minus 4x. And finally plus 2. So I just needed to reorder it, yes? And now can I identify my A, B, and C? Because I'm going to need those, aren't I? What is the A? 1. If there's nothing there, it's assumed to be 1. What is your B? And what is your C? 2. So remember, the sign in front of it goes with it, yes? Perfect. Okay, so for part A, let's do that. We need to find the y-intercept. How do I find the y-intercept? Let x equal 0, yes? Remember, f of x is the same thing as y equals, correct? Plugging in 0 for x, we'd have 0 squared minus 4 times 0 plus 2. So what would y equal here? 2. Now, my y-intercept is an xy point, yes? You got to make sure you're putting these in the correct form. So my xy point would be x is 0, y is 2. That is my y-intercept. It's got to be written as a point which has parentheses around it. Now I can graph that. I'd go over 0 up 2. That's on the y-axis, yes? So I already know 1 point. The next thing I need is my axis of symmetry. So remember, the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. Got to make sure you memorize that. You know what that formula is, that equation. So x equals negative, what is b?
4.
Negative 4, right? So I have a negative b, so a negative times negative 4, all over 2 times, what is a? 1. So a negative and a negative is going to make that a positive 4 over 2 times 1 is 2. So we get x equals 4 divided by 2 is? You have to have the x equals there. It is a line, right? That is the equation of a line. So on my x-axis, I would go right 2, and I would have my dotted vertical line. That means this parabola is going to be symmetric about that axis, right? It also means that my vertex is going to be on that line. Do you agree with that? All right. So then for the vertex, I know my x-coordinate already. My x-coordinate has to be 2, doesn't it? How do I find my y-coordinate?
We have to do the G.
Yeah, you plug in 2 for x, right? So f of 2, so I plug in 2. I'd have 2 squared minus 4 times 2 plus 2. What is 2 squared? 4 minus 4 times 2 is 8 plus 2. So 4 minus 8 would be negative 4. And negative 4 plus 2 would be negative 2. So f of 2 equals negative 2, meaning my vertex is at the point 2, negative 2. Yes? So I would go right 2, down 2, and that's my vertex. So that was all for part A, yes? Part B says make a table of values. So in order to make my table of values, what do I need to do? Go to my y equals, and I'm going to graph it, right? So x squared minus 4x plus 2. Now you could have also graphed that original form of it, right? It's still going to give you the same thing. So I know what it should look like. I also already know my vertex, don't I? So because I know my vertex, I'm going to put that vertex in the middle. I know I have to have the point 2, negative 2. That's my vertex. That's the center. So if I know that's the center, I probably need to plug in 1 and 0, which I already have the point 0, 2, don't I? And then I probably need to plug in 3 and 4. And if you know this is 0, 2, you should know this is going to be 4, 2, isn't it? Because it reflects. But you can go to your table and plug in those values, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You would have 0, 2, 1, negative 1, 2, negative 2, 3, negative 1, and 4, 2. So we would go right 1, down 1, right 3, down 1, right 4, up 2. And we can go ahead and graph the function, which is part C. Questions? Now, if it just told you to find the axis of symmetry and vertex, do you have to graph it? No, right? We can find them right there, can't we? All right. The next thing we're going to talk about, and this is the last new thing we're going to talk about, is the maximum and minimum value. So what the maximum and minimum value is talking about is how far does it go up or how far does it go down? So in this case, if we look at this, your minimum value is going to be down here at the vertex. But what we're talking about is always the y coordinate, because up and down is your y-axis, right? So we're talking about the y-coordinate of the vertex for the minimum, if it's opens up, and the y-coordinate for the maximum if it opens down. So if we look at example 3, we're going to flip it over and do example 3 here. It copied on the wrong page. So our function is f of x equals negative x squared plus 2x plus 3. So right away, can you tell me what the shape of this would be? Would it open up or would it open down?
Down, because the negative.
Right here with the x squared, it's going to have to open down, yes? So would I have a maximum or a minimum value? I'm going to have a maximum value. I know that because it's going to be the y-coordinate of the vertex up there, right? It doesn't go above that, does it? All right, then it asks us to state the maximum. Well, in order to find the maximum value, you need the vertex. And in order to find the vertex, we needed the axis of symmetry, didn't we? So we need to find our axis of symmetry. And in order to find the axis of symmetry, remember that is the equation x equals negative b over 2a. I encourage you to write that every time you find it because it's going to help you remember that equation. So I need A, B, and C. What is your A for this equation? What is your B? And what would your C be? Good. All right. So x equals negative, B is 2 over 2 times A is negative 1. So this would be negative 2 over negative 2. So what is my axis of symmetry? Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is, so my axis of symmetry is x equals 1, right? I need the vertex because remember, your maximum value is the y coordinate of the vertex, right? So I know my x coordinate's 1, but I now need my y coordinate, don't I? And so right here I plug in f of 1. Now remember, this negative is on the outside, so it stays on the outside. I plug in my 1 for x, so I'd have 1 squared plus 2 times 1 plus 3. What is 1 squared? 1, but I have the negative on the outside. Agreed? 2 times 1 is, and 3. So I have 2 and 3 is 5, and negative 1 would give us 4. So f of 1 equals 4. Do you agree with that? So my vertex is at the point 1, 4. So your maximum or minimum is always that y coordinate of the vertex. So we said we have a maximum value, and that maximum value equals 4. Easy enough? All right, now we got to talk about our domain and our range. So if you think about this equation, we know the vertex, we would go right 1, up 4. And we know it's going to open down something like this. Do you agree? Just a quick sketch. Yes? So remember, your domain are your x values going left to right. Your range are your y values. Yes? So our domain, thinking about it, does it go left forever? Does this go down and the left? Does this go down and right? So your domain for any quadratic is always going to be what? Yes, in parentheses, right? Interval notation. Now our range. Remember your range. Does it go down forever?
Yes.
So where does it begin? So I have a parenthesis, negative infinity, and it goes up to the maximum, which is 4. And remember, that's included, right? So we show that with the square bracket. So your maximum or minimum is always going to be part of your range. Do you agree? Questions on that? Okay, let's do this last equation or last problem here. What would we do here? First of all, can you see in your mind what this would look like? What would it do? So it's going to, yeah, because the x squared is positive, we know it's going to open up, right? Okay. I also am going to have my a, b, and c. Do you agree with that? So right now I'm going to go ahead and identify a, b, and c. What is your a? 4. What is your b? And what is your c?
11.
Good. All right. Determine whether there is a maximum or minimum value. It's got to be a minimum if it opens up, right? So I know I'm going to have a minimum. Now we've got to find the value. So in order to find the value, what else do I have to have? All right, so we start with the axis of symmetry. And how do I find it?
Negative b divided by
X equals negative b over 2a, right? So x equals negative times negative 24, right? Over 2 times 4. I think the most common mistake I see on this is you just say that's a negative 24. It's not, is it? If this number is negative, a negative and a negative make a positive 24 divided by 8, which would give us an axis of symmetry of x equals 3. Now, if you have the axis of symmetry, if that's one of your answers, you have to have x equals 3. If you just put 3, that's incorrect. All right, next thing is the vertex. We know the x-coordinate is 3, don't we? We need to find that y-coordinate because that's going to be our minimum value, correct? So to find that, I plug in here. Do you agree? So f of 3. So I have 4 times 3 squared minus 24 times 3 and plus 11. So this would give me what? 4 times 9 minus 24 times 3 is 72 plus 11. 4 times 9 is 36 minus 72 plus 11. So what is 36 minus 72? Is negative 36 plus 11 is perfect. So my y-coordinate is negative 25. Now, would you really want to graph that? I would not want to graph that because that's going to be big, right? All right. So my minimum value would equal what? Negative 25. That's my y-coordinate. Okay, so then our domain and range. Think about this. If we sketch a very simple graph here, we'd go right 3, down 25, right? And it would open up, so it would look something like this. Do you agree with that? All right. So our domain, what's our domain going to be for every quadratic? All right. What about our range? Where does this begin? It starts at negative 25. So how do I express that? Bracket. And where's it go to? Positive to infinity. What do you think? Not too bad? Are we good? Feel okay on this? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and hand out your assignment, and then we're going to talk about it real quickly. Because you're not going to do every problem. Okay, so everybody look at their paper real quick. It is first of all important that you realize you have to find the y-intercept, the axis of symmetry, and the vertex for part A. Then you have to show your table of values, and you have to graph it, okay? You have to do those things. So you do the first 3 problems, and you have to show all of those things. Here, you do not have to do 4, you only have to do the odds. So you don't have to do 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. So you only do the odds on those. I do want you to look at this one where it has 6x squared. You're missing some values there, aren't you? You'd have to add 0x and 0 in order to get it in the correct form. You can then identify that A would equal 6, B would equal 0, and C would also equal 0, yes? So you're going to have to do the same thing on that number 5, right? So just because it doesn't have a B and a C doesn't mean that you can't do it. You just have to add your 0x and your 0 so that you can get it into that general form. I promise that somebody's going to have a question on that. Just add 0x and 0 for your constant, right? Because we're not changing a value if we're adding 0. Everybody understand that? You cannot add 1 because that does change a value. Are we good? Any questions? Okay, go ahead and get busy then.